What's up, ladies and gentlemen? This is the Resistance. Shout out to everybody out there. Back at you with another live stream. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Perfect Sense Resistance. Local Resistor, Weymouth, UK. Shout out to y'all. Appreciate y'all. Oh, man. I'm going back to Philly. I'm going back to Philly. Hey, man, real shout outs real quick. Shout out to Hold Them Accountable Philadelphia, man. Real quick shout out to Hold Them Accountable Philadelphia. This man is down there in Philly doing his thing. Hold Them Accountable Philadelphia. He got 587 subscribers, y'all. The video is Philadelphia police really believe they above the law. They really believe they above the law. Shout out to Denise Speaks. How you doing? I like this dude. I like how he interact with the police. You know what I mean? He's straightforward. He don't play no games. He's straight with the turkey and drumstick, chicken wings, whatever you want. He's with it. He with the grits. He with the shits. He with it all. Shout out to Sick Ass Fool. Breaking news. Kim Potter on the stand right now.
Yes, I believe trainers in this quarter, 2002 and 2003.
And you started as a law enforcement officer?
1990.
With respect to tasers, there's been evidence in the case that you had a Taser 7, is that correct?
Yes.
And the evidence in that was that the Taser 7 was shaped like a gun, fair statement?
Yes.
And the Taser 7 had a dark black, or at least a dark handle, and a dark top. Do you remember that? I'm trying.
The objection is overruled. You may answer.
Breaking news,
Yes.
ladies and gentlemen. Kim Potter is on the
Was
stand.
it approximately a month before April 11th that you received this taser? Do you remember?
In the courtroom, I was told I received it on March the 26th.
Okay. And also, while we're there, with respect to these tasers and testing them, the rule that we read said should test the electronics every day. Is that right?
Yes.
And there is testimony that you didn't test yours a couple days.
Shout out to Tommy Guns.
Yes, that's what I was told.
And do you agree with that you didn't test it?
I don't recall if I would have or wouldn't have.
And was that an important feature for law enforcement officers with new tasers
No.
that never used them since they had them?
Correct.
And while we're there, did you ever use a taser, use it by actually shooting it in all of your years' career as a law enforcement officer?
I would take my taser out on rare occasions, but I don't believe I ever deployed it.
Okay, when you take your taser out, it's to de-escalate what is going on. Is that a fair statement?
Sometimes, or to prepare for what might be behind a door. Sometimes an officer has a gun and sometimes an officer has a taser out.
Right. And now the taser that was switched from you, did that go to one of your partners, that taser?
My old taser?
Yes.
I believe they were just put in storage at the police department.
And those tasers were all yellow, right? The
Yeah.
handle, the top, the whole thing was yellow.
Yes, except for the battery pack. I believe that was black and there was some
Okay.
markings on the side.
I'm going to show you these tasers. Show you this taser.
Yes.
They about to show her the taser from one of the exhibits. They just took the audio out. Shout out to everybody in the chat. This has changed to Kim Potter being on the stand. It was a regularly scheduled program. I just changed the title. I'm about to go change the thumbnail. Shout out to everybody in the chat. So we got audio that's low. I had a video to show y'all from out of Philadelphia. The man's name, the channel's name is Hold Them Accountable, my Philadelphia PA. So hopefully I could get to y'all with that on another live stream after this maybe. But we're going to focus our attention on Kim Potter and the stand right now. Shout outs to everybody.
Well, they're at Sidebar. We're going to take a break. Don't go anywhere. We're back in the courtroom live right after this.
So we got a sidebar going on. I don't know what y'all want to do. Y'all want to play around with this? No, it's just a sidebar, so they should be coming back very soon. I ask y'all to be patient.
It's a very psychological thing that's happening here.
Hey man, I appreciate everybody that viewed the last upload that I put on my channel last night. Appreciate everybody who contributed to that view. So right now I'm 19,876 subscribers in. If you want to help me reach 20,000, make sure y'all hit the subscribe button. Appreciate all my members. Appreciate all my subscribers. Appreciate all of y'all. It's on the sidebar right now, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to read some comments from the video that I last uploaded. Kim Potter trial, sidebar right now, ladies and gentlemen. We're waiting for that to come back up. Yeah, they should be coming back up momentarily. So I got Adam Blumenthal. This is from this video right here I just last uploaded. Uninterrupted, cop stripped man of his rights, but he won't back down. And that's at 10K. Shout out to everybody who have to get the 10K on the views right there. Maybe small, but I definitely appreciate it, you know. Some channels, 10K may not be nothing, but it's a lot here over at the Resistance channel. Appreciate y'all. 19,878 subscribers. Help me reach 20,000. All right, let's get back into these comments from this last video. Sidebar on the Kim Potter trial right now. They should be coming back soon. So Adam Blumenthal, he says, a shame that Massachusetts in general and Boston specifically have gone from liberty and the shot heard around the world to the corrupt, rights-denying tyrants we see here before us. And of course, he's speaking about the video that I just uploaded and I went live on last night. We had 4-star Superintendent Paul Donovan, ladies and gentlemen. Paul Donovan, he was the star in this video. We also had a few other stars, a couple sergeants, all at the Boston headquarters, and they showed out. They showed out in this video. All right, we back at the Kemp Powder trial.
Avenue North. We were talking about pursuit policies, doing some regular FTO training, and he observed a vehicle in the turn lane with a blinker on inappropriately.
And was that the white Buick?
Yes.
And did you have a conversation with him about that?
Yes.
And what was that conversation?
We discussed a little bit of suspicious activity. He noticed a pine tree or air freshener hanging from the rearview mirror,
Bitch ass
and
air
the tabs were
freshener.
expired.
And
Petty ass police.
did you stop that vehicle?
Officer Lucky wanted to stop the vehicle, yes.
And
Oh,
let me
you
ask you
wanted
a
to stop
sort of
it, so-
hypothetical. If you had been working alone that day on Sunday afternoon at 2 o'clock,
You
would
would
you
have
have
stopped
stopped the
it.
vehicle?
Yes, you would have. What?
I can't even finish the question, Your Honor.
All right.
That's not fair.
Yeah.
It's just, they know how to try a lawsuit, I would
Okay.
think.
The objection is overruled. You may answer.
Oh. Yeah, you'd have pulled it over.
My question was, if you weren't with a field training officer that day and you were on patrol alone, would you have stopped that vehicle?
Most likely not.
And why not?
An air freshener to me is not, it's just an equipment violation. And during the COVID times, the high COVID times,
Oh, you
the
lying.
Department of Motor Vehicles was so offline that people weren't getting tabs.
You
and we were
lying.
advised
Get the fuck
not
out of here.
to.
You was the
try to
shooter,
enforce a
so
lot of
you
those
know
things
damn
because
well you would have
The
pulled them
tabs were
over
just
for
not
an air
in
freshener.
circulation.
Okay. But you did stop the vehicle, right?
Yes, part of field training is that my probationer would make numerous contacts with the public throughout the day.
And what happened after the stop? If you remember, go ahead.
Before Officer Lucky stopped the car, we ran the vehicle, confirmed that the registration was expired, and that the registered owner had a petty misdemeanor type warrant for some type of drug offense.
And that was a registered owner of the vehicle.
Yes,
So after you did that while you were still in a squad car and not.
yes, it's part of the multitasking that a probationer will have to do is run a vehicle license plate, call into dispatch, and initiate their lights.
Okay, well, try and talk a little slower. I know you're probably nervous, but I'd like to get all of this in. All right.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you stopped the vehicle, is that right?
Officer Lucky initiates the traffic stop.
And what happened after he did that?
The vehicle stopped kind of in an entrance to the church on 63rd, and he got on the PA and told the vehicle to pull ahead just a short distance.
Was that because he was parked in the driveway of the?
Yeah, and I think there was a vehicle trying to come out, as I recall.
Okay. What happened next?
Officer Lucky and I exited our marked squad car. Officer Lucky walked up to the driver's door, and I stood at the right rear corner of the white Buick.
So you did get out of the car.
Most definitely.
And why did you stand where you were standing?
Part of it was so I could see where Officer Lucky was, and to provide cover to see what else was in the vehicle.
In your experience of 26 years and being a patrol officer all those years, is stopping any vehicle at any time that you don't know, does that be considered a dangerous situation?
Yes.
Why?
Sometimes there's guns in the car. Sometimes there's uncooperative people. You don't know who you're stopping.
Yeah, because you don't know, right?
Right.
So while you were standing there in the rear of the vehicle, did you hear what Officer Lucky said?
I could hear parts of the conversation. He didn't seem to be in any stress when he was asking questions. He took out his notepad, and it looked like he was writing down something which would end up being a name and date of birth.
Okay, and after he did that, did you two go back to the squad car?
Yes.
And at some point in time during the stop or right after it, did Officer Lucky do anything in connection with obtaining another squad car?
Yes, he called for a second car to come.
What is that about? What?
It would just be a backup officer the registered owner had a warrant of some nature. It wasn't a bad warrant. It was just a regular petty warrant, which would still, you'd want a second officer. Or I guess in this case, a third officer. Officer Lucky and I are considered only one officer.
And why are you and Lucky just one officer?
Because he's in field training and he's a probationary employee.
All right. So did the third officer, Officer Johnson, arrive at some point in time?
Yes, Sergeant Johnson arrived.
And was that before you looked up in the computer about this driver of the vehicle, or after?
I don't know exactly when he arrived. I know Officer Lucky and I were discussing running the name he was given through some various systems.
Okay, and did you do that, you and Officer Lucky?
Yes.
Was there any correction that you told him about during this time that he shouldn't have put the name in one?
He had gone to the Minnesota, because the driver didn't provide him with any government issued ID. He would have to verify some information to run him properly in our system through TriTech. So you run them sometimes through the Minnesota DVS with just a name and a date of birth. It'll give you a Soundex hit on various people with that either same name or common name with a date of birth.
So did you correct him on that?
We were talking about, I don't know if I corrected him on it, but
So what happened after that?
he would copy the OLN, which is a driver's license number, off the screen and then put it into our TriTech system, or CAD, and that would run him through the state for driver's license and warrants and other hits.
And did you find anything about the driver?
The driver came back with a suspended driver's license, gross misdemeanor, bench warrant for weapons, and protection order.
So a gross misdemeanor for weapons ordinance. What went through your mind, if anything, when you read that?
It would be concerning that there'd be a weapon on the person or in the vehicle.
And why would that be?
In my experience over 26 years, I have found guns in cars, either by accident or by them just sitting out in plain view.
And what about a person with a weapons warrant?
They're more likely to be carrying a weapon or have a weapon access to them.
So what about the was it a temporary restraining order that came up? Was that it?
Yeah, I think they're called ex parte orders. It would be a temporary protection order until the parties would either have a court hearing in front of a judge.
Shout out
to
to
make it a
Rosalind
permanent
Giles.
order.
And there would be a name of a female on that?
Yes, there was.
Mr.
And was there a
Imperial.
female in the Buick or in the automobile that was stopped?
Yeah, in the front. Yes, in the front passenger seat.
Streets of
So
gold.
after you learned that, did you also learn something? Did Officer Lucky tell you something about drugs or marijuana?
When he initially got back to the car, he told me there was a obvious smell of marijuana and some seedlings or shake residue on the center console inside the vehicle.
Okay. So with all of that information, what did you do next?
We told Officer Lucky explained to Sergeant Johnson what was going on.
Where was Sergeant Johnson? Was he in your squad car?
He was standing at my passenger door.
Go ahead.
And Officer Lucky was explaining to Sergeant Johnson what was happening and what he wanted to do. Officer Lucky only told Sergeant Johnson that he had a warrant. And I told Officer Lucky that he needed to tell Sergeant Johnson what the warrant was for. A weapons violation warrant would be cause for care and concern.
All right. And after that conversation, what happened, if anything, next?
We got out of the vehicle. Sergeant Johnson was going to the passenger side. And
Excuse me, don't let me interrupt you.
Shout outs to Real
Back up a
Peoples.
little, I'm getting ahead of me. What was the plan when you got out of your vehicle with Lucky and Johnson was outside? What was your plan?
The plan was for Officer Lucky to get the driver into custody for the warrant, and we'd further investigate with the female who she was and if she was the petitioner or the subject of the restraining order.
Were you required by policy and law in learning about that warrant to arrest the driver of that car?
Yes, it was an order of the court.
And with respect to the restraining order, or whatever you called it, did proper police procedure that you knew of for 26 years required to find out who that lady was?
Yes,
And why would that be?
it's my duty to find out who she is to make sure she's not in harm's way. There's been times when that happens and somebody's ended up killed because that wasn't followed.
So now we're at the Buick. It's a Buick car, white car. Is that
It's a
right?
white car.
And now we're at the white car, and you three went up to it, correct?
Yes, Sergeant Johnson went to the
Where did
passenger
Johnson-
She
side.
almost made me choke on my smoke. Supreme Court ruled that it's not their obligation to worry about anyone's
Keep an eye on
safety.
the occupants of the vehicle, and just to monitor what's happening outside in the world. See if people are walking up on you or things go wrong.
And where were you located?
I was towards the left rear corner of the car.
And where was Officer Lucky?
He was advancing to the driver's door.
And how, by the way, before this, how long had you known Officer Lucky?
I think we were on our 5th shift.
And he was pretty new arrival, was he? Or,
I believe he was in 2nd phase maybe, but he had been a police officer before.
okay, what does second phase mean?
He wasn't in his initial 4 weeks. He was in the start of the second 4 weeks.
And you testified you knew at least back then that he had come from another police department, correct?
Yes, I think he worked at 2 previous agencies and he was an explorer.
Okay. Now let's go back to when you three arrived at the white car. We've already said where you're located. Officer Lucky was at the driver's door, is that right?
Yes, he would have been standing behind the post between the driver's door and the rear passenger door.
What do you mean by that, standing behind the post?
He wouldn't have been directly in front of the door because that would be an unsafe approach.
And this was this a warm day? Was the window down? Remember?
I don't know if the window was down or not.
Okay. But in any event, where were you standing again?
At the left rear corner.
And did you hear what Officer Lucky said?
Yes, I heard him ask the driver to step out of the vehicle a couple of times.
And did the driver step out of the vehicle finally?
Finally, he asked Officer Lucky a couple of times what was going on, and Officer Lucky said he would explain to him.
When he got out of the car?
Yes,
And so did the driver get out of the car?
yes.
And what do you remember happening next?
Officer Lucky had him turn around, and I think he was still asking what was going on. Sergeant
he?
John,
Who's he?
the driver,
Go ahead.
Sergeant Johnson and Lucky told him he was under arrest, and I told him he had a warrant.
Okay, so who said he was under arrest first?
Sergeant Johnson, I believe.
And Sergeant Johnson testified here. You remember that?
Yes.
And after he said that, did Officer Lucky say he was under arrest too?
Yes.
And you heard that?
Yes.
And what did you say then?
I told him he had a I told him he had a warrant.
You just said warrant.
I think so.
Did you specify what kind of warrant, if you remember? If you don't.
I don't think I would have. It wouldn't have been in my normal.
Okay, so what happened after Johnson and Lucky said you're going to be handcuffed or you're under arrest, and you said that there was a warrant? What happened next?
Officer Lucky had him put his hands behind his back, and I noticed that in the driver's right hand was something. It was paper or something, and I took it out of his hand and had it in my left hand.
And you had that in your left hand?
Yes.
And then what happened next? Why strike that? When you did that, I take it you got closer to the driver?
Yes. I reached into the driver's hand and took out what he had in his right hand.
Right hand or left hand?
His right hand, and I held it in my left hand.
Okay. And what happened next?
Officer Lucky started to say something about, don't do that, don't tense up, stop doing that. And then it just went chaotic.
What do you remember happening after that?
I remember a struggle with Officer Lucky and the driver at the door. The driver was trying to get back into the car.
Well, he was trying to get back in the car. What did you do?
I went around Officer Lucky as they're trying to get back in the door. I'm between the door and Officer Lucky and the driver. And the driver's getting into the car.
And what happened next?
They're still struggling, and I can see Sergeant Johnson and the driver struggling over the gear shift because I can see Johnson's hand, and then I can see his face.
And you knew Johnson for many years before, is that right?
She
Yes.
about to cry, y'all. She
And
about to
by
cry.
looking at his face at that point in time,
The bitch is about to
what
cry.
did you interpret it to me?
He had a look of fear on his face.
Oh, come on with the bullshit.
It's nothing I've seen before.
Shout out Streets of Gold.
Did you say anything when you saw this?
Make sure
What did
y'all
you do?
share
We were
this.
struggling. We were trying to keep him from driving away. It just went chaotic.
No. It ain't go chaotic.
And then
Shout out to Mr. Imperial. You went chaotic.
I remember yelling, "Taser, taser, taser," and nothing happened. And then he told me to shut up.
Oh, Academy of fucking Award. Get the fuck out of here. You see this shit, ladies and gentlemen? This is why it's no more soap operas. You got this type shit right here. Shout out Joe Casano.
Can you
Don't
proceed
cry
or
now.
Fine.
Okay.
Sick ass fool. Murdered.
After the driver said you shot him, do you remember what you said, or do you? If you don't remember, did you look at the video and see what you said, or do you actually remember what you said? I guess is my question. Not with help from a video.
I don't remember what I said.
Not much, Joe.
And
Shout out to
What do you
South
remember
Florida.
next, if
Joe
anything?
Casano.
They had an ambulance for me, and I don't know why. And then I was at the station. I don't remember a lot of things afterwards.
Yeah, because
Do you remember saying something about prison?
No.
Get the fuck out
If
of
you
here.
did say that, do you have any idea now why you would say that?
Yeah, to save your ass. Don't lie.
Was the climate back then about police officers a little rough?
The objection is sustained.
All right. You don't remember saying it,
No.
and you don't know why you said it.
No.
Do you remember the response that our Sergeant Johnson?
Shout out to Real Peoples.
No.
Don't see one tear. Best
When
actor goes to
Next,
Kim
do you
Potter.
remember what happened, if anything? If you remember.
She ain't got no tears, y'all.
I remember getting an ambulance, and then I was at the station.
Okay. And you remember being in the ambulance, arriving at the station?
No.
You don't remember
No tears.
the
No.
station?
I remember getting to the station.
Dry face
Once you
liar.
got to the station, do you remember what happened next?
The next thing I remember is Officer Fricky was in the room with me
And where were you located? Do you remember that?
in the front office.
Okay. In the front office room, do you remember, were you sitting down, standing up?
I was on the floor.
And after that, at some point in
Streets of
time, did
Gold.
your husband
Streets
show
of
up?
Gold said voices back real quick. Shout out Streets of Gold.
At what time, believe, from back there, April 11th, at what time do you believe that your memory came back to you?
Denise B says she knows she has been caught. She knows she's been caught. She knows she fucked up. Look at that long, droopy ass face.
Probably when my husband got there.
Look like one of the
So
Seven
much
Dwarfs right
busy.
now. Mike Norsdorf, he said that's the only reason she would have tears. Joe Casano from Florida, he said, I just hope she gets more than that stupid
After that
bitch
night.
Amber Geiger.
And for the last few months, have you been in therapy?
Yes.
You better have that.
And did you still work as a police officer there?
No,
Did you quit?
I did.
And this was your career?
Yes.
Mr. Imperial
And
said
when did you
his
quit?
face made you shoot him.
A day or
Protect
two
the
after the
bullshit.
incident,
And why did you quit?
there was so much bad things happening. I didn't want my coworkers, and I didn't want anything bad to happen to the city.
And did you own a home in Anoka or Hennepin County at the time?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
You and your husband?
Yeah.
Excuse me,
Y'all can go see that on this channel. We went
the
there.
objection is overruled.
We went there virtually, ladies and gentlemen, to the home
Your
of Kim
family
Potter.
home for years.
The home of Kim Potter about 2
Yes.
days after she did her bullshit.
And did you sell it?
Going to catalog.
Eventually,
Before you sold it, did you move out of the state?
yes.
And do you now live out of state?
Yes.
Denise Smith says, oh, now she has mental issues. Tommy Guns, bye, you dirty biatch. Then I turned the mic down for a minute.
Thank you. I'm done here.
Is Albert Cross?
Sick ass fool said she quiet because she knew she was a murderer. She is a murderer.
Good morning, Ms. Potter.
Shout out to Reynolds Lawsey.
You've been a police officer, or were a police officer for 26 years.
That's a long time.
Isn't that
Yes.
right? You said you started in 1995,
Damn.
Yes.
and that was with the Brooklyn Center Police Department for that entire career, right?
Yes.
And you said that you resigned from the Brooklyn Center Police Department, right?
Yes.
And that was on April 12th of this year, right?
Yeah, within a day or two of the incident.
Right after you had shot and killed Dante, right?
Yes.
And throughout that time period, you were a licensed peace officer, right?
Cold-blooded
Yes.
piece of shit.
And to become licensed, you had to go through a number of requirements. Fair?
Yes.
You had a college degree.
Excuse me, the officer speaking in that mic too.
Sure.
Thank you.
You have a college degree, right?
Yes.
And you also had to complete the peace officer education program. That's that skills component that you talked about.
Yes.
And that included skill sets and classroom training as well.
Yes.
You had to pass an exam to become an officer.
Yes.
And then you did all that before you started with the Brooklyn Center Police Department in 95, right?
Yes.
Shout out to Doug Miller. Doug Miller
And
says
then
no
you got
tears
your
coming out.
license through the post board, correct?
Yes.
And that stands for the Peace Officer Standards and Training.
Yes.
So you were licensed throughout that whole 26-year career, right?
Fuck
Yes.
DSS.
And
Taser,
you
taser.
maintained all
Jail
of the
cell.
requirements to keep your license,
Yes.
including all the training that was required for it as well, right?
Yes.
And that training that's required for your license has all different kinds of components, true?
Yes.
You have things like use of force, use of firearms, tasers, all kinds of things.
Yes.
And you did all that training.
Yes.
And you did all that every year throughout that 26-year period, right?
Yes.
Sometimes multiple times a year, right?
Yes.
And all of those requirements were in place to make sure that you were at the beginning of your career and continued to be, competent and capable of performing the requirements of the job, right?
Yes.
And not mistakenly shooting a motherfucker.
You mentioned on direct that you were also a hostage negotiator as part of your duties, right?
Crisis negotiator.
Crisis negotiator. Did that involve some hostage type situations?
I've never had a hostage situation.
Okay, a crisis negotiation.
Yes.
And that involved some de-escalation tactics, I presume, correct?
Yes.
And you had to develop that skill set and be pretty good at de-escalating situations as a crisis negotiator. Fair?
Yes.
So you had some experience in stressful situations doing that.
No.
So you were a crisis negotiator, but never experienced a stressful situation.
We talk to people.
Talk to people in crisis.
Yes.
And part of your job as a police officer is dealing with people on their worst days, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
People who don't want to cooperate with you sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Most of the people we talk to in crisis are either barricaded behind a door or talking to you from another room.
Okay. For 26 years, you were a patrol officer, right?
Yes.
So you saw people out on the street every day
Yes,
as part
she
of your
did.
job duties. Okay?
Yes.
She's
And
diverting.
You talked about doing a lot of traffic stops during that career, correct?
I did some traffic stops.
Okay. Well, in some of those cases, there are people who have weapons, right?
Yes.
Sometimes people want to flee, right?
Yes.
Sometimes people are violent.
Yes.
And all of that's part of being a police officer, dealing with people in those situations,
No
right?
teardrop yet. She don't even need tissue.
You'd agree that you're bound
Terrell
by
Peoples.
policy and the requirements of the job that Brooklyn Center, the police department, sets for you, right?
Yes.
And you heard Commander Fleslin testify that you had to acknowledge those policies and essentially agree to abide by them every year you were an officer, fair?
Yes.
And you'd agree that your fundamental duty as a police officer is to safeguard life, right?
Yes.
And you also have the duty to never employ unnecessary force. True?
Yes.
Part of the policy also includes some of your responsibilities as an officer, right?
Yes.
And that includes being alert and attentive and capable of performing your job, right?
Yes.
And getting back to the training and sort of the post requirements, there's a lot of training that goes into being a police officer, fair?
Yes.
And we talked about a couple of those things, but one of those subjects is use of force, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
And use of force can include things like
She getting a little slight
restraints,
attitude, y'all.
handcuffs, defensive tactics, chemical
She's trying to
irritants,
stay
using
focused.
batons, tasers, less
She's getting a
lethal,
little peeved.
weapons and firearms as well, right? All those things are options available to you. True?
Not all of them.
Okay, well, you carry a whole number of things on your duty belt every
I
day,
think I
right?
should title
Yes.
it
And that includes a firearm and a
How to Get
taser.
Peeved on the Witness Stand.
Yes.
And you also had other
Peeved power
items on
on
that
the
duty belt
witness
as well,
stand.
correct?
Yes.
And as part of the training that you went through every year, they cover topics, all kinds of uses of force, right?
Yes.
Including the things on your duty belt and maybe other options that the department could use additionally, true?
All this just to get down to the fact that she's in neglect for shooting a motherfucker and mistaking a taser when she has a gun in her hand. Okay?
Yes.
You were trained about when you could use force.
All this just to get down to she was negligent.
And what would be appropriate force. Fair?
Fair.
And not only were you trained on that, but you had a lot of policy that that dictated what you could and could not do in a particular situation, right?
Yes.
And you were also trained on the readiness aspects of use of force, right? Being ready to engage whatever force might be required, right?
Yes.
Including making decisions under stress, right?
What do you mean?
Well, you had a lot of scenario-based training, right?
Yes.
And in those situations, those scenarios were set up to be as close as they could be to real life, right?
I suppose.
So you would be trained to have to make decisions in the moment about what to do and what force to use, right?
It was a training situation, so it was usually slow and meticulous and controlled.
Well, you did this year after year, right, for the entirety of your career, correct?
I think scenario-based training started later, probably the last 10 or 15 years.
Sure, but use of force training has been around for a long time, right?
Yes.
Because since you started as a police officer, you have, in some cases, had to use force, true?
Yes.
And there are limitations on how and when to use that force, right?
Yes.
So you've had training on that throughout your entire career, right?
Yes.
And as part of that process, the way that it's required for you to maintain your license is that you sign in and you sign off on attendance forms, and you basically, you have to be there, right? You can't not be there, right?
Right.
And every year you have a certain number of training hours that are required, right?
Yes.
And you said on direct that you participated and you
Shout out
were
Oregon
paying
Rule.
attention during all those trainings, true?
Yes.
And some of those trainings had classroom instruction, PowerPoints, things like that, right?
Yes.
Some of them also included reviewing policies and other documents, right?
Yes.
And then there was also the hands-on training with the practical components, things like using drawing weapons, things like that, right?
Yes.
And over the course of your career, you completed many.
Time for a quick break. We'll get you back live in the courtroom next.
They're talking about a quick break, ladies and gentlemen. So they basically just trying to get down to the fact of how negligent she was of shooting Dante Wright. Like, all this questioning and everything, you know, to you and I, it's bullshit, but it's very important in the courtroom in front of those jurors for them to get the, you know, detailed step of what actually was going on when she killed that man that day. So, they're taking a break. I don't understand why. Let me see if they all took a break. Maybe it's in a feed somewhere else.
At a minimum, in addition to all the other training you had, you would have had taser training year after year for at least the last 19 years, right?
Yes.
And the taser training that's required, you saw the documents that were in court, also requires not only review of policy, right? The taser policy, right?
Yes.
And it also requires practicing those reaction side draws, correct?
Sometimes.
All right, if we could put up Exhibit 334, please, the last page. I'm going to put on the screen what's already been admitted as Exhibit 334.
No redness of the eyes, no, you know, wet skin, nothing. Like, that was all an act, that whole crying situation.
Highlight the subsection C, please. So, as part of the taser policy includes that all training should include performing reaction hand draws or cross draws to reduce the possibility of accidentally drawing and firing a firearm.
Oh,
That's part
wow.
of the policy, right?
That's what it says.
And that's part
Wow,
of what you're trained
that's what
to
it
do,
says.
correct?
We aren't always drawing our tasers from our holsters. A lot of times we were in plain clothes during training.
Okay. Well, your policy that you're required to
I
abide
sense a
by,
little
that you signed off
attitude
on,
coming out.
requires
Yo,
that
this is
you
the second
perform
time.
reaction
Am I
hand draws,
wrong?
true?
During the training, yes.
It also includes the reason for that, right?
Yes.
And that's so that you reduce the possibility of accidentally drawing and firing a firearm, right?
Yes.
And we can take that down. Part of the reason for that is weapons confusion, right?
Yes.
And that was known in the field and has been known for
Sick ass fool
a
said
number of
she's
years.
getting steamed.
True?
Good.
I guess.
Well, you were trained on it, right?
We talked about it.
It was part of your PowerPoints, correct?
Yes.
You were made aware during PowerPoint after PowerPoint after PowerPoint that drawing and firing the wrong weapon can happen, right?
And we were told it wasn't something that they expounded on.
You were told that.
Yes.
And you signed documentation every year you were certified acknowledging that you knew the risks, received and reviewed the materials required for you to carry that taser, correct?
Yes, I signed the document.
Okay. Now, in terms of the carrying of these weapons, reaction side means what for you?
That'd be my left hand.
Shout out to
Okay.
SW.
You're right-handed?
Put
Yes.
her under the
So
jail.
carrying a taser, you have done for years on your left side, correct?
Yes.
And your firearm you carry where?
On my right side.
How many years have you carried your firearm and your taser that way?
My firearm for 26 years and my taser, according to your documents, for 19.
So as long as you've had that taser, you carried it on your left side, correct?
In the beginning, I carried it on my right side in a drop holster.
And when did you switch?
When we were given new holsters.
Joe Casano said all the PowerPoints and you ain't learned shit.
But far before 2016, you saw the images that were up in court. Long before that, you were carrying your taser on your left side, correct?
Yes.
Perfect
Years
Sense
and years,
Resistance
right?
said absolutely rehearsed. Absolutely rehearsed, of course.
We talked a little bit about reality or scenario-based training. When you go through those trainings, you have available to you all the options that would be on your duty belt, right? Although inert for the purposes of training, right?
Yes.
And the purpose of that training is to try to recreate real-life stressful situations as best as possible to practice making those types of decisions in the moment. Fair?
Fair.
Loke Resistor, Weymouth UK said,
Let's
I
talk a
guess,
little bit about
what the
your
fuck sounds like a
taser.
child or Karen? Fuck her,
You'd
she's
agree that the
lying.
Taser 7 that you have and the Taser you had before that has a safety mechanism on the side of it, right?
Yes.
And you have to flip it up to arm the Taser.
Yes.
And when the Taser is on and armed, it beeps, right?
It's Imperial
You don't know
said
if
you
it
pulled out
beeps.
the weapon.
There's a
You are
display screen that turns
responsible
on.
for it.
Yes.
And then there are two lasers with the Taser 7 that appear on your target, right?
Yes.
A green one for the top probe, right?
I believe so. It was a new taser.
And a red one for the bottom.
I would guess so, yes.
Well, you were trained on it, right?
Shout out
Yes,
to Prince
for a while back.
Ammons.
Well, you were
Hello.
trained in March of this year on that
Prince
Taser, correct?
Ammons.
Yes.
You have to successfully operate and handle that Taser in order to be certified to use it, correct?
Yes.
And you went through that hands-on
Prince
process.
Ammons said she
of
know how a taser
turning
feel
on that
in the
taser,
head, and she know
safety
how a
handling
gun
that
feel
taser
in her
to be
head.
certified, correct?
She's sitting here lying about all that because she
Before
went
that,
to
you had
training, and then she
26
probably
feet,
be out there training other
And that
police
taser also
officers.
had
Do you know
a
she's?
laser and a safety
I don't understand why they wait and tell her that
Yeah.
she should go to jail.
Yes.
Yep,
and the Taser, and that
She's
was
lying.
the Taser that you had been carrying.
she's
for
definitely
years
lying.
before, right?
Yes.
Very similar to the Taser 7 in that way.
Similar but different.
She ain't paying
All right,
attention.
so I'm going to put on the screen.
She thought she had it in the bag all those
Some of
years.
these
She thought she had it in the bag. She ain't have it in the bag.
212.
She was negligent, so she should pay for it. You fucked up. It's the hand that you've been dealt.
Now this is a picture,
Okay,
side-by-side pictures of you
you're
on
an
April
example
11th, correct?
for humanity.
Yes.
And your Taser is pictured on the left side of your duty belt, correct?
Yes.
And that's the way you've been carrying it for years and years, correct?
Yes.
And your firearm you carried on the right side of your duty belt, right?
Yes.
And you'd agree that the standard procedure for a reaction side, left-hand draw for your Taser in this case, would be to draw that weapon with your left hand, correct?
Yes.
All right, you can take that down. You were asked some questions on direct about spark testing, the function test of the taser. The policy says that you should do that before the beginning of every shift, right?
Yes.
And you didn't do it the last 2 shifts that you worked, correct?
That's what the documents say.
Right. You didn't do one for the last 4 of your last 10 shifts that you worked, in fact, correct? That's what the documents say?
Which dates?
You didn't do it on March 27th, correct?
I guess.
You didn't do it on March 28th.
Got her.
All right. Okay, one more
Got
objections,
her.
please. If she doesn't know, she can say she doesn't know.
The documents show that you didn't do a spark test for your last 10 shifts. You have no reason to dispute that, right?
No.
And the day of this incident on April 11th, you didn't do a spark test that day, right?
No. According to the documents.
And even though, that day was a slow and uneventful day at the beginning of the day, right?
I don't know. I don't have a log.
Well, you told Dr. Miller that day started as a slow and uneventful Sunday, right?
I don't know if I did or not.
Awesome sidebar.
Sidebar. So she didn't do any spark tests days prior to this murder. She just pretty much thought she had it in the bag as far as, her training over the years. Never did it occur to her that she would shoot the shit out of a motherfucker, let alone killing him. Okay? And, it came down to proper training. And we're speaking about a training officer who didn't have proper training, because if she did, she would not have reacted like this. But not a reactor like this, the man would still be alive. I would be better off hearing that he got a leg shot or whatever, or, shot in the arm. But we all know police officers are trained to shoot center mass. Okay, so that's not going to happen. But if anything, nothing should have happened when it came to her pistol being discharged, her service weapon being discharged.
Okay, you may continue.
All right. So April 11th started as a slow and uneventful day, right?
Yeah, it's a Sunday.
Okay. I'm going to put on the screen exhibits 224 and exhibit 178 next to each other, please. All right, Ms. Potter, on the screen are exhibits 224 and 178. You'd agree that these are photos of your taser and your firearm, respectively, yes?
My firearm for sure. I'm not sure if that's the taser that was taken that day, but I'm guessing it is.
And you carried a Taser 7 that day, correct?
Yes.
And that's what's in this picture, exhibit 224?
Yes.
Now, these items look different, don't they?
Yes.
The objection is overruled. I think you answered. Did you answer?
He getting on the judge's nerves.
Yes.
And just to be more specific, the taser is yellow, right?
Yes.
The firearm is black, correct?
Yes.
The taser weighs about half as much as your loaded Glock, right?
I don't know.
Doesn't weigh the same, correct?
That's what they testified to earlier, but I don't know.
When it comes to the Taser 7 that you had just been recertified on or certified to use, your department used long-range cartridges for that Taser 7, correct?
I don't know.
Shout out Dragon
Trained
Nut
to use it,
Transparency.
I don't know now. I don't remember.
You don't remember being trained to use the Taser 7 at all?
No, I remember being trained, but I don't remember today what cartridges we were issued.
Okay. So you went out on the street with a Taser, not knowing what that Taser did?
I would assume that on the day I worked, I would know, but I don't know. It's been months now.
Okay. No reason to dispute that the Brooklyn Center Police Department used long-range cartridges in the Taser 7, correct?
No.
And the reason to do that would be so that you could fire a farther distance with your Taser, and you wouldn't need to approach someone up close, correct?
I don't know. I would assume so, but I'm not positive.
Well, that's why someone would use a long-range cartridge as opposed to a short-range cartridge, correct?
Yes.
And you've been trained on Tasers since 2002, correct?
Yes.
You know how they work, right?
Mhm.
And you know
Yes.
what they do. Can we take those down, please, and put up Exhibit 214? Okay, Exhibit 214 that's been admitted is on the screen. Is this a picture of your duty belt?
Yes.
You'd agree that the holsters for your Taser and your firearm are different, correct?
Yes.
And your firearm holster is empty in this picture, right? There's no firearm in it.
Correct.
Is that this right here?
Yes.
The Taser holster is made of plastic, right?
Yes.
You have to push a button, this button right here, and rock it back to get it out of the holster, correct?
Yes.
And your gun holster is made of leather, is that right?
Yes.
And it has a little snap, is that right?
Yeah. Yes.
And how does that gun come out of that holster?
Shout outs to everybody in the chat. Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to have to conclude this live stream. I did have a regularly programmed live stream, but I did not know that Kim Potter was taking a stand so early. I would suggest that you guys go to the nearest live stream that's broadcasting the Kim Potter trial. What I had scheduled for y'all earlier today, I will bring it back to y'all tonight, hopefully. And if I don't bring it back tonight, it will come back for sure. But I'm not going to say tonight, but most likely tonight. Uniform Gang, Philadelphia Police. Shout out to everybody in the chat. I appreciate y'all. Dragon that Transparency. Perfect Sense Resistance. Sick Ass Fool. Streets of Gold, Chuck Bronson, Prince Ammons, Level Resistance, Mr. Imperial, The Rub Peoples, Joe Casano all the way from Florida, ladies and gentlemen. Loke, a resistor, Weymouth, UK. I appreciate all of y'all. Make sure y'all hit the bell for notifications, ladies and gentlemen. Hit that bell. I'm always going live at least twice a day. Look out for me. Hit that bell. Don't forget to subscribe. 19,878 subscribers. Help me get to 20,000. Appreciate y'all. Been a long road. Help me get to 20,000. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the likes. Everybody about to get killed out here. Like it for everybody. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Make sure y'all be safe out there. Check me out, Eyes on Blue Bloods. That's my backup channel on YouTube. I'm also on Odyssey, BitChute, and Facebook, The Resistance. I'm everywhere in public. Be safe out there. Hopefully I see y'all later this Friday night.
It's a very psychological thing that's happening here.